Okay, so it's me, it's Miss Cheka. Hello, everybody. We've got holes. Um, we didn't stop at the end of a chapter, so if you are following along in this edition, it's page 28. If you do not have this edition, then it's about a page and a half after chapter 7. So we're on chapter 7. And when we last left off, poor Stanley had arrived at Camp Green Lake, and they told him that he had to dig a hole that was the depth and width of a 5-foot shovel. So that is not the most fun, poor Stanley. And he's also met some of his other camp members, inmates. I don't know what to call them. All right. Stanley's great-great-grandfather was called Elia Yelnats. He was born in Latvia. When he was 15 years old, he fell in love with Myra Menke. He didn't know he was Stanley's great-great-grandfather. Myra Menke was 14. She would turn 15 in 2 months, at which time her father decided that she should be married. Elia went to her father to ask for her hand, but so did Igor Barkov, the pig farmer. Igor was 57 years old. He had a red nose and fat, puffy cheeks. "I will trade you my fattest pig for your daughter," Igor offered. "And what have you got?" Myra's father asked Elia. "A heart full of love," said Elia. "I'd rather have a fat pig," said Myra's father. Desperate, Elia went to see Madame Zeroni, an old Egyptian woman who lived on the edge of town. He had become friends with her, though she was quite a bit older than him. She was even older than Igor Barkov. Oh, I see Tess. Hi, Tess. The other boys of this village liked to mud wrestle. Elia preferred visiting Madame Zeroni and listening to her many stories. Madame Zeroni had dark skin and a very wide mouth. When she looked at you, her eyes seemed to expand, and you felt like she was looking right through you. "Elia, what's wrong?" she asked. Before he even told her he was upset, she was sitting in a homemade wheelchair. She had no left foot. Her leg stopped at her ankle. "I'm in love with Myra Menke," Elia confessed, "but Igor Barkov has offered to trade his fattest pig for her. I can't compete with that." "Good," said Madame Zeroni. "You're too young to get married. You've got your whole life ahead of you." "But I love Myra. Myra's head is as empty as a flower pot." "But she's beautiful." "Well, so's a flower pot." "Can she push a plow? Can she milk a goat?" "No, she is too delicate." "Can she have an intelligent conversation?" "No, she is silly and foolish." "Will she take care of you when you are sick?" "No, she is spoiled and will only want you to take care of her." "So she's beautiful. So what?" Ptwee. Madame Zeroni spat on the dirt. Tess. Oh, I guess you got your book is in. We are on chapter 7. If you have this edition, then we're at the top of page 30. If you do not have this edition, we're about 2 pages in, but honestly, I would just sit tight and then I'll tell you when it's at the beginning of chapter 8. She told Elia that he should go to America. "Like my son. That's where your future lies, not with Myra Menke." But Elia would hear none of that. He was 15 and all he could see was Myra's shallow beauty. Madame Zeroni hated to see Elia so forlorn. Against her better judgment, she agreed to help him. "It just so happens my sow gave birth to a litter of piglets yesterday," she said. "There is one little runt whom she won't suckle. You may have him. He would die anyway." Madame Zeroni led Elia around the back of her house where she kept her pigs. Elia took the tiny piglet, but he couldn't see what good it would do him. It wasn't much bigger than a rat. "He'll grow," Madame Zeroni assured him. "Do you see that mountain on the edge of the forest?" "Yes," said Elia. "On the top of the mountain, there is a stream where the water runs uphill. You must carry the piglet every day to the top of the mountain and let it drink from the stream. As it drinks, you are to sing to him. She taught Elia a special song to sing to the pig. On the day of Myra's 15th birthday, you should carry the pig up the mountain for the last time. Then take it directly to Myra's father. It will be fatter than any of Igor's pigs. If it is that big and fat, said Elia, how will I carry it? How will I be able to carry it up the mountain? The piglet is not too heavy for you now, is it? Asked Madame Zeroni. Of course not, said Elia. Do you think it will be too heavy for you tomorrow? No. Every day you will carry the pig up the mountain. It will get a little bigger, but you will get a little stronger. After you give the pig to Myra's father, I want you to do one more thing for me. Anything, said Elia. I want you to carry me up the mountain. I want to drink from the stream, and I want you to sing the song to me. Elia promised he would. Madame Zeroni warned that if he failed to do this, he and his descendants would be doomed for all eternity. At the time, Elia thought nothing of the curse. He's just a 15-year-old kid, and eternity didn't seem much longer than a week from Tuesday. Besides, he liked Madame Zeroni and would be glad to carry her up the mountain. He would have done it right there and then, but he wasn't yet strong enough. Stanley was still digging. His hole was about 3 feet deep, but only in the center. It sloped upward to the edges. The sun had only just come up over the horizon, but he could already feel its hot rays against his face. Okay, and again, if you have this edition that looks like this, then I'm now at the very, very top of page 32. But if you have a different one, it's okay. Just wait a couple of pages and it'll be easy to figure out where we are when we start chapter 8. As he reached down to pick up his canteen, he felt a sudden rush of dizziness and put his hands on his knees to steady himself. For a moment, he was afraid he'd throw up, but the moment passed. He drank the last drop of water from his canteen. He had blisters on every one of his fingers and one in the center of each palm. Oh, hi, Jamie. Everyone else's hole was a lot deeper than his. He couldn't actually see their holes, but could tell by the size of their dirt piles. He saw a cloud of dust moving across the wasteland and noticed that the other boys had stopped digging and were watching it too. The dirt cloud moved closer, but he could see that it trailed behind a red pickup truck. The truck stopped near where they were digging, and the boys lined up behind it. X-ray in front, Zero at the rear. Stanley got in behind Zero. Mr. Sir filled each of their canteens from a tank of water in the bed of the pickup. As he took Stanley's canteen from him, he said, "This isn't the Girl Scouts, is it?" Stanley raised and lowered one shoulder. Mr. Sir followed Stanley back to his hole to see how he was doing. "You better get with it," he said, "or else you're going to be digging in the hottest part of the day." He popped some sunflower seeds into his mouth, deftly removed the shells with his teeth, and spat them into Stanley's hole. Every day, Elia carried the little piglet up the mountain and sang to it as it drank from the stream. As the pig grew fatter, Elia grew stronger. Guys, I'm going to have to pause for a little second to get a cup of water because my throat's bothering me. Hold on. Okay. So, this aspect of the book is just a little bit confusing because now it's going to jump forwards and backwards into different timelines. So when it's talking about Stanley, we know that they're talking about like right now, Stanley, Camp Green Lake, he's digging the holes. When it talks about Elia, we know that he's talking about the long, long ago past because, we know it's a long, long ago past because that's his great-great-grandfather, right? Okay. So going back into the past, every day, Elia carried the little piglet up the mountain and sang to it as it drank from the stream. As the pig grew fatter, Elia grew stronger. On the day of Myra's 15th birthday, Elia's pig weighed over 50 stones. Madame Zeroni had told him to carry the pig up the mountain on that day as well. But Elia didn't want to present himself to Myra smelling like a pig. Instead, he took a bath. It was his second bath in less than a week. Then he led the pig to Myra's. Igor Barkov was there with his pig as well. These are two of the finest pigs I'd ever seen, Myra's father declared. He was also impressed with Elia, who seemed to have grown bigger and stronger in the last 2 months. I used to think you were a good-for-nothing book reader, he said, but I see now you would make an excellent mud wrestler. Well, may I marry your daughter? Elia boldly asked. First, I must weigh the pigs. Alas, poor Elia should have carried his pig up the mountains one last time. The 2 pigs weighed exactly the same. I'm also going to point something out, guys. We know that Igor Barkov wants to marry Myra. We know that Elia wants to marry Myra. We know that the father is kind of undecided on who wants to marry Myra. Who's missing in that equation? Who do we not know their opinion? Yeah, it's Myra. Nobody knows who Myra wants to marry, and nor yet has anybody asked. So whenever that happens in books, I want you to always pay attention to that. Why doesn't anybody ask the girl? Okay, so now we're in the present. Stanley's blisters had ripped open and new blisters formed. He kept changing his grip on the shovel to try and avoid the pain. Finally, he removed his cap and held it between the shaft of his shovel and his raw hands. This helped, but digging was harder because the cap would slip inside. The sun beat down on his unprotected head and neck. Though he tried to convince himself otherwise, he'd been aware for a while that his piles of dirt were too close to his hole. The piles were outside his 5-foot circle, but he could see that he was going to run out of room. Still, he pretended otherwise and kept adding more dirt to the piles he'd eventually have to move. The problem was that when the dirt was in the ground, it was compacted. It expanded when it excavated. The piles were a lot bigger than his hole was deep. It was either now or later. Reluctantly, he climbed out of his hole and once again dug his shovel into his previously dug dirt. Reluctantly is a great word. It means you're doing it, but you don't want to do it. So you are reluctant to do it. Myra's father got down. So we're in the past now. Myra's father got down on his hands and knees and closely examined each pig, tail to snout. Those are 2 of the finest pigs I have ever seen, he said at last. How am I to decide? I only have one daughter. Why not let Myra decide? Suggested Elia. That's preposterous, exclaimed Igor, expelling saliva as he spoke. That's my face. But do you know that for hundreds of years, thousands of years, that is how men have decided what women and girls are going to do? They just decided for them. It's decisions that would last for the whole rest of their lives, like who they were going to marry. It's not a very good system. Myra is just an empty-headed girl, said her father. How can she possibly decide when I, her father, can't? She knows how she feels in her heart, said Elia. Myra's father rubbed his chin. Then he laughed and said, why not? He slapped Elia on the back. It doesn't matter to me. A pig is a pig. He summoned his daughter. Elia blushed when Myra entered the room. Good afternoon, Myra, he said. She looked at him. You're Elia, right? She asked. She barely even knows who he is. Myra, said her father, Elia and Igor have each offered a pig for your hand in marriage. It doesn't matter to me. A pig is a pig. So I will let you make the choice. Whom do you wish to marry? Myra looked confused. You want me to decide? That's right, my blossom, said her father. Gee, I don't know, said Myra. Which pig weighs more? They both weigh the same, said her father. Golly, said Myra, I guess I choose Elia. No, Igor. No, Elia. No, Igor. Oh, I know. I'll think of a number between 1 and 10. I'll marry whoever guesses the closest number. Okay, I'm ready. 10, guessed Igor. Elia said nothing. Elia, said Myra, what number do you guess? Elia didn't pick a number. Marry Igor, he muttered. You can keep my pig as a wedding present. So that's very interesting, right? There's a lot of interesting things happening there because, yeah, Elia had the hots for Myra and he loved her and he carried the pig and he went to Madame Zeroni, but he never talked to her. He just assumed that if he liked her, she must like him back, right? And then it turns out that like she barely knows who he is. And she doesn't seem to, care about him very much at all because she's just kind of picking at random. So he made a lot of assumptions there. I think that happens sometimes in romantic encounters. So, think about that. Also, Igor's too old. The next time, we're in the present again. The water truck came. It was driven by Mr. Pendanski, who also brought sack lunches. Stanley sat with his back against a pile of dirt and ate. He had a bologna sandwich, potato chips, and a large chocolate chip cookie. How you doing? Asked Magnet. Not real good, said Stanley. Well, the first hole's the hardest, Magnet said. Stanley took a long, deep breath. He couldn't afford to dawdle. He was way behind the others, and the sun just kept getting hotter. It wasn't even noon yet, but he didn't know if he had the strength to stand up. He thought about quitting. He wondered what they could do to him. What could they do to him? His clothes were soaked with sweat. In school, he had learned that sweating was good for you. It was nature's way of keeping you cool. So why was he so hot? Using his shovel for support, he managed to get to his feet. Where are we supposed to go to the bathroom? He asked Magnet. Magnet gestured with his arms to the great expanse around them. Pick a hole, any hole, he said. Stanley staggered across the lake, almost falling over a dirt pile. Behind him, he heard Magnet say, but first, make sure nothing's living in it. After leaving Myra's house, Elia wandered aimlessly through the town until he found himself down by the wharf. He sat on the edge of the pier and stared down into the cold, black water. He could not understand how Myra had trouble deciding between him and Igor. He thought she loved him. Even if she didn't love him, couldn't she see what a foul person Igor was? It was like Madame Zeroni had said. Her head was as empty as a flower pot. Some men were gathering on another dock, and he went to see what was going on. A sign read, Deckhands wanted, free passage to America. He had no sailing experience, but the ship's captain signed him aboard. The captain could see that Elia was a man of great strength. Not everybody could carry a full-grown pig up the side of a mountain. It wasn't until the ship had cleared the harbor and was heading out across the Atlantic that he suddenly remembered his promise to carry Madame Zeroni up the mountain. He felt terrible. He wasn't afraid of the curse. He thought that was a lot of nonsense. He felt bad because he knew Madame Zeroni had wanted to drink from the stream when she died. So, it's going to point another thing out. This is something that happens quite a lot in real life. is sometimes, people make an assumption, oh, that person, they must be in love with me because I love them, or they want to be my friend because I want to be friends with them. And then, sometimes the other person doesn't like you back, or they don't want to be friends. And you know what? That is okay. That is like, okay. People are not puppets. They have their own choices in the same way that you get to make choices about who you want to, be friends with, or, who you have romantic feelings for. But notice, and this is why I want to point this out, notice how he reacts is that Elia's first reaction is, well, if she doesn't like me the way I want her to like me, it must be because she's dumb. It must be because her head is empty as a flower pot. And that you have to watch out for, guys. One, that you're not mean to other people just because they're, not returning feelings that you want them to. And two, sometimes when somebody is mean to you, that's what it is. It has nothing to do with you. That's them. So Elia, he's very disappointed, but he also has some maturing to do when it comes to thinking about the ladies. And also, oops, he broke a promise. He broke a promise that he had made to Madame Zeroni. Hold on a second. I need to plug in my computer. Boy. We still have 2 more pages before chapter 8, but we also have run out of time. So I know, I'm sorry, it's awkward to stop in the middle of these chapters, but we are going to start tomorrow and finish chapter 7 and start chapter 8, and it will be delightful. So I will see you guys tomorrow. Everybody be good. And yeah, bye guys.